Welcome to High Stakes. I'm your host, Tracey Devlyn. On this show, I chat with authors about the moments in their stories that change everything, what's at stake, what it costs, and why we can't look away. From thrillers to romance to sci-fi and beyond. Let's get to it. Joining me today is USA Today best-selling author Wendy Walker to talk about her new psychological suspense, Blade. Welcome to the show, Wendy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Well, according to your bio, at least at one point in your past, you trained for competitive figure skating. A fact I didn't know while I was reading the book, and I just remembered at whenever I was reading through it, I'm like, oh my gosh, Wendy gets an A plus on research. It was just a wonderful submersion into that world. It's
Well, I'm
great.
so pleased, yeah, because when you're writing about a world that you know very well, it's really hard to navigate how much detail to put in and what's going to be interesting to people who are, there to really have a suspenseful story, a thriller. But you also need to create the world with enough detail that they can, attach to the characters and the setting and all of that. So I'm glad
Mhm.
that it struck a good balance. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess maybe get us started out, and if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that time of your life and maybe how it eventually led to you actually writing a book about the sport. Anything you'd like to
Yeah.
share?
Oh, absolutely. So I never thought I would write about my years figure skating. It was a long time ago. I skated from when I was, very, very young, I think 6 or 7, until I was 16, which was when I completely quit the sport very abruptly. And the last 3 years, I lived away from home at a training facility in Colorado, which is also where the book is based, although I fictionalized the town and the facility. And, for the record, my coach was nothing like Don Sumner, who's the coach in the book. I trained under Olympic coach Carlo Fassi, and I lived year round in a dormitory there. And they were really complicated years.
Yeah.
I've been, pretty forthright in saying that they were, somewhat traumatic for me as my skills and whatnot were started to become obsolete in the sport. I was very good at the competitive, I'm sorry, the compulsory figures, which are they used to skate around on figure eights, and we would draw these very detailed figures on the ice. Not a lot of fun to watch, but they used to be a third of the score. So I was very good at those, and so I would, was able to overcome the fact that I didn't have any triples, and triples became really important. And that all started when I was training. And so while that was happening, I was also a teenager living alone in a fairly unsupervised environment and just skaters coming in and out. Very hard to form, really close and lasting friendships. You'd make, a good friend and then she would leave.
Mm,
So they were not great years for me. I sort of was witnessing the decline of this dream, which was all I'd ever known in my life. And at the same time, feeling incredibly isolated and alone and turning to older
mm,
skaters and partying and hanging out, like anything to sort of, um, just relieve the emotional pain of being out there alone. And so when I left, I thought I would never really revisit the world of figure skating, even though I love watching it and I'm
yeah.
always cheering the skaters on. But years later, my agent, thought it was time for me to try to go into that world, and he thought it would be really interesting for people to experience it. So I agreed to do it, and it was a really interesting process for me. I don't think I would have done it if he hadn't sort of, suggested it and really believed in the possibilities. So here we are.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing because I believe you dedicated the book to your agent, right?
Did yes.
Yeah. It's it's really neat because obviously it's a business relationship, but there's also friendships in those business relationships. And he must have known you well enough over the years to know this part about you, and that being familiar with your writing knew that you could do it justice, and that he was the one who put it out there first. I love that. That's really incredible.
Yeah. And it was a really, it was a very different experience writing because he kind of knew that a lot of the material was, sort of tripping over some really sore spots in me and some,
Mhm.
some traumatic events, and mining those for a fictional story was emotionally complicated for me, more so than any book I've ever written. And
Mhm.
he was just incredibly understanding, and because he also had to have his editor's eye on the book and making sure that it was a good story, and that becomes it's tricky. It's always, I think, hard for agents and editors to give constructive criticism on an author's work. That's always, a delicate
Mhm.
process. But with this, it required even more, I think, thoughtfulness. And he was just really wonderful in getting this story out of me, and sort of, understanding what it, the difficulty that it was posing for me on a personal level. Um, and got through it. So here we are. So yeah, I dedicated the book to him, for all of those reasons.
At the end of the day, did you find that the process was cathartic?
Yeah, what I didn't expect. I knew that I was going to be revisiting some painful memories, and having it's one thing to sort of know that they're there and having talked about them to friends and all of that, and knowing, what the impact those years had on me, what that was. But it's another thing to go and really describe it in great detail. But as much as this is a dark thriller, I also had to bring to life the joy of the sport and the reason that
Hmm.
this character, because we go back with the main character back in time to when she was a young teenage girl who loved figure skating, and it had been her whole life. And I had to go back and try to describe the joy. And those were the parts of my experience that I really had not thought about for many, many years, because they weren't sort of the trigger points for me, right? So I would always go back and say, "Oh, and this happened and that happened. It was so hard, to give up this dream, and to have all these personal stumbling, moments in my teenage years." But then to go back and say, "Well, yeah, actually, there was this great joy. I loved skating. I lived and breathed skating for most of my childhood." So that part, it was, I think, really healthy for me to
Good.
reclaim that. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I'm very happy for you that that worked out that way. Well, why don't you tell us about Blade?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So Blade is about a young skater in the fictional world of competitive figure skating, who is about to be charged for the murder of the assistant coach at her rink. And an attorney comes to assist her case, and she is a specialist dealing with juvenile defendants of violent crimes. She focuses on defenses that involve childhood trauma and the impact that it has on the mind and on behavior. So she comes to town, but she is also a former skater at the same rink where this young woman, Grace Montgomery, is being questioned for this murder. So she has to revisit her years at the palace, and the dark secrets that she left behind. So it has a dual timeline of Anna Robbins in the present day, going through the evidence, trying to get the story before they charge her. It happens over the course of a few days in the middle of a snowstorm. And it also goes back in time to when she first arrived at the palace as a 13-year-old girl. So the two timelines unfold at the same, sort of in lockstep. And we get to really experience what it was like for her back then and what those secrets actually were that impacted her so much that she never returned to the sport or to this town of Echo, Colorado until now.
Yeah, I really loved how you structured the story, the dual timelines that you mentioned, and you also peppered in between like transcript, like court
Yes.
transcripts or testimonies, which for me it really added this layer of tension. And I was curious, did you know you'd sprinkle those testimonies from the start, or was that something that you added, that an element that you added later?
I actually added it later, and this is, just to go into sort of the more technical stuff of writing a thriller. The hardest part sometimes is figuring out how to disclose information that you want the reader to have. And so there are times where even when you have dual timelines or even multiple points of view, multiple characters telling a story where the characters don't yet have that information, or maybe they have it, but they're not quite ready to disclose it to the reader. And so you have to find another vehicle. And that's where I was in the story. Like, oh gosh, I really need to add to the suspense. I want the readers to know, this fact. And so that's when I came up with this idea of peppering in these little chapters that are transcripts from, really, in my mind, they're sort of deposition testimony
Okay.
that's often conducted before a trial. But it's vague as to what they are because it involves all of the characters. And what's really fun, I think, about it is it accomplished the goal that I needed it to accomplish, which is disclosing information. But you also get to hear the bits of the story in the voice of the characters that
Hmm.
are talked about or that are involved in the other narrations. So you get to really see them in a different light. And in the audiobook, actually, we had actors and performers play those roles. So you get to hear the different voices in the audiobook for people who like to listen.
Yeah, no, I love audiobooks. I do a lot of my reading via audiobooks, and I love their full cast productions
Yeah.
that they do. And I think that might have been the first book of yours that I had ever read. The name is escaping me. It's What Remains, something like that.
Oh, What Remains? Yeah,
What
that was, yep.
Remains. Yes, that was
Yes.
an amazing story, and
Oh,
that
thank
was
you.
kind of my first introduction to you, and really
Oh, great.
yeah, that's great. So it was wonderful. So
And
yeah.
yeah, actually, I write for Audible directly. So I write those fully scripted and sort of hybrid audio first novels. So novels that are written specifically for audio. So when I was writing Blade, I had that experience sort of under my
Mm,
belt, and so I could envision how it would really add to the audiobook as well as to the print version. So it was a great vehicle for both of those reasons.
and it's a different style of writing for audio, it seems, than writing a full
Yeah.
novel. Is that
Yeah, it's
something?
interesting. Yeah, it's really different. I just had one come out called The Room Next Door. It came out in October, and it was really an experiment. I'm glad to say that it seems to be resonating with listeners. But it's a full-length novel that has only dialogue that's in little scripted moments, so you really get to hear the characters' voices. As they are, having these little conversations or even flashback conversations are fully performed, and there's music and sound effects, and it's fully produced. So having that, yeah, it's definitely, I have an eye on that when I'm writing a novel. But of course,
Yeah.
Blade is written primarily for print, so there's traditional narration with traditional dialogue. But then these fun little chapters that are fully scripted in between. So it was fun to bring those skills into writing Blade for sure.
Yeah, that's great. Well, on this show, we like to talk about the story stakes. I like to
Hmm.
say love, death, and the fate of the realm. They're all real high stakes, but sometimes there's these softer moments that kind of dwell beneath the surface
Yeah.
that, it's more like personal stakes for the protagonist. Can you talk a little bit about that? What might have been personally on the line or personally at stake for Anna?
Yeah, for sure. So we have, Grace Montgomery who's about to be accused of first degree murder. So her stakes are very clear, but Anna is really the main protagonist in the story. And what's at stake for her is she's returning to this place that she left behind 14 years ago, and she left some very dark secrets there. And so for her, it's and really, and also the death of this coach who was there when she was a skater. It's
Mm,
opening up that whole box of memories and threatening to expose them to the world. So she's facing not only her own demons, but also being held accountable for things that happened 14 years ago that she kind of ran away from. So there's a lot at stake personally. And I think that's really, for me, the hallmark of a psychological thriller and why we have that genre carved out of the suspense, the overarching suspense genre, is because in these psychological thrillers, the stakes are usually internal. There's
hmm
always a crime that needs to be solved, and maybe someone might be accused of the crime, but the real stakes are in the minds and the emotions of the characters, and coming to terms with the demons from the past. I think is something that everyone can relate to, and
hmm
that's, I think, a really, it's fascinating because we all know that people have secrets. Everyone we meet has a past, and learning what is hiding behind just everyday people in their past lives is, I think, a really fascinating journey for a lot of readers.
Yeah, absolutely. Since this is a really kind of a deeply personal story for you, is there anything that you, I guess, hope readers will take away from the story or maybe even just think about long after they finish it?
Yeah, for sure. So the main theme of this book is childhood trauma, and I my entire life I feel like I've been gravitating towards the psychology of childhood trauma. When I was an attorney, I was a family law attorney at the end of my legal career before I became a full-time writer. And I was gravitating toward high conflict custody cases. I became certified as a guardian ad litem, which is a professional who steps in to advocate for the children in a case.
Mm,
And and then when I started writing thrillers, all of my thrillers, there's a thread of childhood trauma in either the villain or the protagonist, or someone in the book has
yeah.
something from the past that has shaped who they are today. So it's always been there. And I think for me, what I was hoping to get across in this novel is the concept that people really are shaped by their childhoods,
Mm,
that the good things and the bad things that happen, they all go into the wiring of our brains that are not fully developed until we're 24 to 26 years old. And and that, there's a lot of information in the book about that, from Anna as the attorney, and then we also get to witness who she is today and what happened to her in the past and connect those dots. So I think just an awareness and maybe a curiosity about childhood trauma is something that I was hoping to really get across, and I hope people will take
mm.
those concepts away when they're done with the book, and also just to really enjoy the story, of course.
Yes, yes, absolutely. You always want to provide an entertaining read, but it's nice when there's a little bit of a either an
Yeah,
educational factor or an awareness factor that you can throw in there too. And I think that you accomplished what you were trying to accomplish there. So
yeah,
well
and I
done.
think in the world of competitive sports, not just figure skating. We see these young women and men, uh, on TV all the time. We follow
Mm,
their lives. There are documentaries about them now. We see them sometimes, fall apart, then come back, and you never really know what's going on behind the scenes. I think I think a lot goes on that is not shared, and and that I found fascinating as well. That these experiences that young athletes have are really complicated because they are young and their brains are developing, and the world that they are immersed in is not child friendly most of the
yeah.
time. I mean, it's competitive. It's adults are not always trustworthy. They really have to be guarded and hopefully protected by their
Mm,
parents and coaches, because there's a lot at stake for everyone involved. Years and years of training, money and sacrifice, and dreams that are so close to the hearts of these athletes and their families that they're very hard to let go of. So I think that too, just sort of opening that door to further conversation about what these sports can do and can mean to young people. But also that, that you can also move on and have other dreams and other goals and a whole like full life, when the sports have run their course, whether it's
mhm.
achieving the dream or not achieving the dream. But that too, I think, is something that's an interesting conversation point from the book.
Yeah, and they're obviously human like the rest of us, and we think about all the things that we go through during our lifetime. Well, they're going through it as well, as you mentioned,
Yes.
but depending on the level of the sport, sometimes they're playing it out in front of they're working through it in front of the world, which I
Yes.
can't
Oh
even
yeah.
imagine the pressure of that. I just can't imagine it, and still trying to be a teenager as well, you know.
Yes. Oh, 100%. And trying to find a sense of self.
Mm,
Who am I in this world, and how am
yeah.
I valued, and how do other people see me? How do I see myself? All of those things. In figure skating, I mean, this is so exciting to see three American women really lining up to do well at the Olympics, and even their stories,
Mm,
quitting and coming back, and losing and coming back, and um, you know, just their stories alone, I think, are so fascinating, to learn about what went into getting them on this Olympic team.
yeah. Yeah. Well, we will shift gears just a little
Yeah.
bit. Not just we have readers and writers who watch the show, and I like to ask authors who have several books underneath their belt about writing advice,
Yeah.
and maybe with the best writing advice you've been given, or if there's something that you've learned during the process of writing that you now share with others to help them through things.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much that goes into it. I've been writing for, I don't even know how many years, 25 years, and I've been a full-time writer for 10 years. Um, it's, I would say that it's really important to just keep building your tools as a writer, and to have your story, but also pay attention to how stories are told, and the new ways that you can find your voice. I think it's really important to have a passion for what you're writing, and to know that world either from research or experience yourself, but also to pay attention to the business side, to surround
Mm,
yourself with the best, whatever stage you're at, either it's a writing group or writing coach, or maybe a paid editor that you're working with. Make sure you're with the right people and that you're getting the best advice. Find the best agent that you can, um, find the best publisher that you can, and to just stay really on top of everything. I think people sometimes have this vision of writers of going into like a writer's cave with, and just, having going into their minds and coming out with these brilliant stories, and they're a best-selling author, and isn't that great? And that's not really how it works. Most of the time, a lot of writers out there, are having, ups and downs. Some have been writing forever and then become an overnight success, but it looks like, they just stumbled onto it when really they've been plugging away for many years. So I think it's important to build skills, write from your heart, find your voice, but then really surround yourself with the best people, and understand and know the business side so that you can keep writing.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? No,
Yes.
those are all great advice. I love all of that. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And my last question is hopefully a fun question. What's one thing that your fans might be surprised to learn about you?
Oh my gosh, surprise. I guess the fact that I never thought I would be a writer. I never had any interest in writing. After I quit skating, I went to college. I studied economics. I was an investment banker. And then I went to law school and I was a corporate litigator and then a family law attorney. I never ever thought I would be a writer or work in any of the arts at all. So the fact that I'm here, sometimes I wake up and I was like, how did I get here? Yeah, so I think that surprises a lot of people because many writers who do this for a living have been studied writing and have been writing all of their lives. But yeah, it was something that came later to me.
Well, it sounds like you were preparing, whether you knew it or not.
Right.
Being in the finance world, that's obviously the business side. That makes probably the business
Yes.
side a little bit easier for you to grasp. And being an attorney, you do awful lot of writing as an attorney, I imagine. So yeah, I think maybe you were preparing and
Yeah.
didn't realize it.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
for sure.
Well, Wendy, well, before we go, can you share what's coming up next?
Yes. So I will have another novel out next year. I can't say too much about the title because I don't know that we've fully decided on it, but it will
Okay.
be it's a story set in wealthy suburbia. It has a love story, a love triangle, and a murder, and it will have multiple time frames as well, points of view. So there's a draft done, but there's a lot of work to be done on that. And I think I will also be writing another Audible original, which will be similar to The Room Next Door, which came out in October. So anybody out there who loves audiobooks,
Mhm.
it's really kind of fun. It's a new format that I don't think has really been done before, and I'm really excited to write another story in that format for as an audio first novel. So look for those things in the next year or so.
Sounds exciting. Both sound wonderful.
Yeah.
Can't wait to can't wait for
Thank
them to come
you.
out. But before then, we have Blade. So, folks, be sure to order your copy today. You can learn more about Wendy at wendywalkerbooks.com,
Mhm.
where you'll also
Yes.
find all of her social links. Wendy, thank you so much for joining me. I love watching your reels on Instagram,
Oh, thanks.
but it's always great to see you in person, too.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. That's it for today's high stakes story. Follow the show so the next episode lands right in your feed. And if you enjoyed today's chat, a quick rating or review helps new listeners find us. Visit tracydevlyn.com/podcast for show notes and links to today's amazing guest and their fabulous book. High Stakes is a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. Thanks for listening. Until next time, enjoy the adventure, everyone.